That's actually what in two companies my colleague said. Oh, hashtag Roland cares. That's one of the things that I take care. Anyways, all right, shall we get started? You're listening to What's Your Baseline, the show where we unpack the real world of enterprise architecture, process management, and everything that helps you build a smarter organization. We talk tools, techniques, and tough lessons learned, so you don't have to learn it the hard way. My name is Roland Wold. Grab a coffee. Let's go into it. We do have a very nice guest on the show today, Angelika Rinck, and her specialty that we're going to talk with her about today is data management, data governance, the whole AI shebang, and why you need data for it. And the only thing I have to say, welcome, Angelika.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to be here. Yeah, so I don't know when it became a passion, the data thing. So perhaps we start at the beginning and then we try to figure out a bit together how that came. So personally, I live in Hamburg. I've started my career, like more than 10 years ago. And there I started as a working student in a e-commerce environment where we tried to build a e-commerce shop, so an online platform to sell beverages to offices. So that's very common in Germany in between. So now, but when we started, it was not this plug and play shops. It was really about putting data and testing a lot, gathering requirements. So it was not brand new, but it was a bit newer for many companies. So, and I had a very, very cool interim manager. So a consultant, external consultant who was hired for this job, and he was my manager. And it was my first real agile project, and probably also the last. So we had this physical Kanban boards, and that was when I started to love really this IT topics and IT project management. So that was really cool time. And afterwards, I switched to a bigger company, so big engineering consulting company, and started in the aerospace environment, and had an engineering project. And I'm sorry, it was a bit like, let's say, it was not that exciting. It was like a bit, not that complex. But then I had the opportunity to go back to IT topics, and I got a huge shop floor digitalization project, also in aviation. So we were a team of 25 people, and so that was quite cool. And I was back in this IT business, and I stayed there. And also there I got to know how important data is. So just in general, of course, everyone should know that in between, but that was how it grew. And beside that, I do some sport, of course. So my whole life does not only consist of working, even though sometimes it feels like that a bit. So I did underwater orienteering, which is very exotic sort of sport. Orienteering. It's like, so you are, it's from, I think it came from the military. So so from special forces in military area. So you have to do this orienteering in a very dark lake, and you have to be very precise and find some orienteering points underwater. And you have like a bottle, of course, and a compass and a meter counter. And then, you have your starting time, you just dive, and the fastest wins. And you have to be precise and fast at the same time. So,
Well, I spent 11 years in the German Armed Forces, as you might or might not know, and I did this in the woods, and I've never dove into a lake. If I got stuck in a lake, I would have done something wrong. 60 tons of steel in a lake, not a good idea. Well, I like to shift to today's topic, which is hopefully something that our audience is very interested in, which is data governance, right? And it feels as if it's super technical, but I think it's also very important. And after today's conversation, I think that our audience will take away the not only the importance, but also the push on how to approach these projects, how to approach the systems that are affected, and how to approach, to be quite honestly, the whole organization and their structures. So, Angelika, tell us a little bit more about the definition of data governance. Let's set the framework, the foundation, and how we're going to work on this, and then tell us why you think it's so important.
Okay. So data governance is like a framework which makes rules of how people are working with data. So it sets like procedures, policy, processes, so the 3 Ps, and helps organizations how to deal with data, and determines where the data flows, in which processes, and who has the access rights, etc. So it's really, it's what's inherent in governance. So, and then you of course have this fulfilling bodies like the data management. But it's a bit tricky because you have data management in different, so you use the word data management in different meanings. So sometimes it's like the doing, changing the data, which is, let's say, a bit below data governance. But in the data strategy, if you talk about data strategy, then you have it like on the same level. So it's a bit confusing in my point of view when I talk about data management, and this it's more related to the doing, I would say. So, and the objective there is to really improve the data quality by acting, while the objective of data governance is more to create value out of data. So, which is very fancy and common buzzwords now. It's like this data products. So at the end of the data governance process. So perhaps that helps to group it
So,
up a little bit.
yeah, I have so many questions now.
Okay.
So,
Great.
so first of all, so if I understand it correctly, you make the distinction between the stewards of data. How does an organization manage their data? And the question that I would have is, in which systems do you do this? Is it on a virtual piece of paper and you set the rules and then the runtime system do this, or do you have dedicated tools for managing this? And then the second question that I have is, how is it different to other architecture areas, especially when you think about process management, where people type in stuff into systems all the time? And the third question that I would ask you to elaborate a little bit about is the data product idea, because the only time when I hear data and product in one sentence, that is when the big social media companies sell our private data so that I get more junk mail and other bad thing. Do those three things make sense for you, and are they in some form related, or do I jump the
Yeah,
gun here?
I tried to remind all the questions. So let's start with the business data steward thing.
Uh-huh.
So the data governance is organized in a so-called data stewardship. So it consists, like you've said already, of data stewards, business data stewards. So there are also other types of data stewards, like, for example, project data stewards or technical data stewards. So it's really it's an organization. Yeah, it's an own organization. Also, some companies have it like a own organization, split it or separate from IT or operations. So where it is normally or often located. So IT is very common operation. There you have the data governance organization normally. So what was your second question?
The second question was like how you manage it. I get the point that you need people who shepherd this thing,
Yeah.
but then the question is how you do this, because you can do it obviously just by issuing some policies and say, hey, from now on you must do blah blah, and you've done your job? Or how do you manage that? What I'm thinking is like using an architecture tool and have big IE data diagrams and ERM diagrams, and they are mapped to applications and whatever. How
Okay.
yeah
Yeah.
how does that work in reality?
Um, and honestly, in most companies, not that good, I would say, because like you've said, you name someone, okay, congrats, you're the business data steward
Hmm.
now, and
Yay.
often you have this like top-down approaches. So yeah, we are a super fancy company. We need data governance, and yeah, we name some poor people that deal with data in their normal life. And then they got the job and they don't even know what is data governance, never heard about
Hmm.
that. And
Hmm.
um, wi- so we have the phenomenon that very often um, the data governance isn't working because there is lack of training and also lack of skills of the people who are named. So being business data steward, it's really tough. So it's like you are a data analyst. So data analysts are very, let's say, good choice in the first place, but they do not only have to look into the data, but more over the data. So what is happening in their business area, in their function where they are working. So it's really tough, and they also have this communicative skills. They have to share the knowledge into their business functions. So and perhaps it's important to say, so data governance is central. It is a central organization, but it has very many decentral elements. So
Hmm.
data stewards come from the departments. For example, if you have a value chain, then they come from, for example, sales, from engineering, procurement, or whatever. So they come from different departments, and they should bring their experience about their data issues into the data governance organization. And there, it is really connection, and the objective is to solve data issues along the whole value chain and not isolated in silos, what we observe very often.
Yeah. So from a practical perspective, and I'd like to come back to my third question that I asked
Yeah.
in that big
Yeah.
wave of questions. I think you need to define those products, and I would ask you to talk a little bit about how you define data products, right? Because with the example like the weight that you mentioned a minute ago, to me that's one little snippet of it, right? And I remember I was working 6, 7 years ago at a large transformation project here, and we had a separate data team, and then they disappeared for weeks and months. And at some point, they came back and said, "Hooray! We got our first milestone. We found an agreement about how we define customer. A customer is somebody who's willing to pay for our offerings." Mind blowing
Congratulations.
breakthrough, whatever, right? And then the HR people came back. Yeah, but no, our employees are our customers, and we all said, "Oh,
Yeah.
that didn't work out." So yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. How does that how would you see and how would you define those
mm,
products? Because we obviously don't talk about something that you can put in a box and put on a shelf and sell it to
mhm,
somebody.
mhm, yeah. So a product is, let's say, at the end of the governance process. So you need to govern data, and then you can create a value out of it. So you can reduce costs, or you have information you didn't have before, and you can use it in another context. For example, you are faster in in certain processes. So one of for example, you are calculating a product. You have a certain configuration. You have to calculate it, and then it turns out that you can calculate much faster, not by using the data, the what is it called? This simulation data. Yeah. So you don't, instead of using the simulation data to calculate the offer or the configuration or the right place, you use the field data you have collected over years and years, but you were not able to monetize it or use it. And then turns out you are much faster. You can calculate things in, I don't know, minutes, which takes normally like days or weeks, because you have to analyze so much and give so much simulations data and adapt the simulation according to the real environment and so on. And now you can just take data you had in your company, and you can do it much faster. So this is like a data product which creates a value to the company. Or perhaps a more precise example. So weather stations have cameras very often, and they are, of course, recognizing the weather, but also how the birds are on the camera. They fly in different height. And it turned out that the behavior of birds shows many things about the weather. So if the weather changes, etc. And now also with AI, it's possible to have very or more precise weather prediction due to the facts how birds fly. So we collected like data for, I don't know, decades, video data, a video material. And now it turns out, okay, we can use this informations we didn't even know that they are important, and now we can do more precise weather prediction. Also, if we talk about this data culture thing, so that people really know not only know the importance of data or how to deal with it, but also know the risk, for example, in terms of AI. I think there is a huge risk which does not only impact the IT, but the whole business. So, for example, if I use AI based on bad data, so it's very simple. You have very bad or often very bad results due to the fact that, of course, we call it intelligence, but it isn't. It's like more on statistics. Yeah, it's on statistics. So a customer or some customers ask me, okay, now we have this Copilot implementation. Great, we can ease the search or research for knowledge, for example. So just connect all the databases, and then you have the perfect answers to any question in a second. And what happens then?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what happens. You know it, but you have different like versions of the same document to keep it very simple, and perhaps they are contradictive. Yeah. So some documents say, yep, you can jump from a certain status to another. And then over the years, the status concept changed and you can't do that. And that creates a very funny, not funny to the company because it costs more money due to bad data. So then the first level support tickets increase because people think, okay, the AI told me I can jump from this to that status, for example, in a certain system. It is not working, so it has to be a bug. First level support, please solve my bug. And then you create issues using AI, for example, which you wouldn't have if you just would look for the documents where the right answer is.
Are you telling me that there is no easy button that I just can press and then
No
things
plug
happen?
and
We're
play.
living in the Angelika, we're living in the 21st century,
I'm sorry.
We're already a quarter in. Come on,
It's sometimes really, I think to people that really know a bit more about that, it's like plug and pray more. It's like not plug and play.
Yeah.
So it's like, please don't do that. Sometimes when I'm on conferences and I'm talking to other expert, I'm really surprised and I fear a bit how less information or knowledge is really behind. So and it's there is a lot about definitions. So then we are there like, oh, I thought Gen AI is that and this and the other. No, this is agentic AI. So there are definitions. We have definitions. Not every term is defined now. But yeah, you were laughing when they defined the customer topic. But this is a very good example. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, in my point of view, so people think they are talking about the exact same thing, but they have a totally different view because it's not defined well. And data
Oh, I
governance is
agree.
a lot about definition, really.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I'm doing this stuff for almost 30 years now, and it's all the same. It's the people thing. It's not technology. It's not what you do. It's
Yeah,
it's the people. Getting them on the same page is crucial, and in more cases than I hope to admit, they're not. So you're defining value for them in terms that they can understand, because otherwise it just becomes another cost center. And we spoke about risk, so as if you can tie it to pains, and sometimes, to be quite honest, it feels easier just to simply pay. But here we saw something else. We saw a value that is
yeah,
created, and I like to turn it back to our audience and ask them: have you seen data stewardship? Have you seen data governance in your organization? How did that work? How did that feel? What did they say? Is there any value in what they produce? Well, if not, what can you do to implement that in your organization so that you come back and have really good data and data governance practice in your organization? We'll leave you for a moment and come back with our second section, some more questions and answers about data governance and AI.
Love won't let you down, won't let you down. Yeah, hey, I need, I need your love won't let you down. Hey, I need, your love won't let you down, won't let you down.
And welcome back. Angelika, very, 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 very interesting conversation. I have so many thoughts, and I try to sort them out in the second half of our conversation. But I like to go back to actually my first question or my first serious question that I asked you. And it's all about the data product. Maybe I'm too dumb, maybe I don't get it, but I'm really interested how you define a data product and how does a good data product looks like? Because I'm thinking, as you know, I'm thinking about a huge warehouse with tiny little boxes on the shelves that say data product 1, data product 2, open at your own risk, and all those things. So can you elaborate a little bit about, from your perspective, how
Mhm.
you would define a data product, how a good data product looks like, and how you would manage that?
Yeah. So I would say data product is something that gives value to the one who uses it, like every product. So if you use a product, you want to have a value. So if you drive a car or you have a car, then you want to come from A to B, for example.
Mhm.
So, but the question, I would like to go back more to the roots. So in terms of data governance, um, what does it mean to have a product at the end is that you have the data governed. So if the data is governed, you have with a very high probability a product at the end. So it's just the outcome of governance. So let me make an example. So you have a certain data element. Yeah. So if we talk about data governance, we are looking at the data in the first place. So it makes totally sense if you want to bring data under governance to identify the most critical data in your company, because you won't be able to govern all the data. Of course,
Yeah.
there are different types of data. Yeah, you have like machine data, so transactional data. You will probably never have like wrong input data because it is machine generated. So it's a different thing with, for example, master data, where you often have people who add data into the system, yeah, like customer data, for example.
Mhm.
So, and if we want to govern data, it makes sense to identify the most critical data in your company, which really creates pain, where you really have pain. For example, you can't export your goods, you can't produce because you are missing some goods or something like that, or you have like security issues, or you can't send your products, etc. Yeah, you have identified your pain point. Yeah, and then you enter into the maturity model, which I use in my daily work. So then you analyze the data in terms of, okay, where does this data come from? What is the definition? What are the attributes you can fill in? What is the definition of the attributes you can fill? So for example, in ERP systems, you have like abbreviations no one knows. So, okay, what does it mean if I type QM0 or QM1 or QM2? What does it mean? I have no clue. What happens in the process if I insert a certain value? So what happens? Do we have some like audit processes? Will someone, I don't know, do whatever in the process afterwards because I decided to put a certain data in? So this is create transparency and definitions. And then you have to know, okay, in which system do I create the data? Is it my, I don't know, PLM system, my ERP, my CRM, whatever system? And is this the leading system? Or is this perhaps only the leading system for the creation, and for the change it is another system? So to get
Mhm.
clarity how the data flows within the system. So this is really about the analysis. And then you have, of course, this metadata about, so you collect metadata about the data you want to govern. And many companies have like a data catalog where they store information not only about data, but also about other like technical IT things, yeah, like physical location of some servers or whatever. So you have this data catalogs, and if you have it as a company, use it. If you don't have it, then I don't know, find a solution or go back to Excel as long as you don't have it. But try to make the information available, so accessible to the one that need to use it.
So
Roland, you want to ask a question?
is the ultimate goal then to build the overall all-encompassing logical and physical data model? And we just haven't reached that goal yet because it's hard and we just started? Or what is the, from a governance process perspective, what is the objective?
Yeah, of course. In an ideal world, you govern all your data, but in the reality, it is, you have to really look what is the effort and what is the outcome. Yeah, it makes no sense to define 10 years a value because you discuss who is a customer, if it's the employee or the real customer, or I don't know who.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you always have to check where do you add value. So transparency, yes, but at one point it's turning. Then you just keep yourself busy, but you don't create value. And this is, I'm sorry to say that this is very often the thing with data governance, that people felt like, okay, it's another governance. I feel controlled, but there is no value. Nothing happens. Nothing is governed. And this is the question I am answering with my team. So the how, the how do I govern my data? So to proceed. So we have now the analysis. Yeah, we know a lot of things about our data, or our data element. Yeah. And then we come to the second point. Okay, we need to know who is responsible for this data element. Yeah. And often everyone wants to have good data, but no one wants to be responsible. It's like the same with processes. Everyone wants to have good processes, but no one wants to be responsible. And with data, it's the same quite often. So you have to identify the department who is responsible, who is the data owner, and this is often the manager of a certain department. And then this manager appoints a business data steward, or already has appointed. And this is, let's say, like a deputy or the representative of this department, who is then in charge and responsible, so has the ownership. So having the ownership is the combination of accountability and responsibility. So this is the second step. And this person, which is very important, so we talked about metadata and systems in the first place, and now this person also decides who is allowed to change data, manipulate in general, create the data in the systems, and sets also the roles and rights in the system. So it's not only about organization, it's also to get the system fixed. Yeah. So in many companies, many people have access rights to data and change rights, which they shouldn't have, because they have not the skills or the permission to change the data, but they have the access rights anyway in the system. Now we have the bridge to this security topic, of course, so reducing or being at the first time aware who has access. So many times we were checking for the first time the accesses in the different systems. So we are wondering why people bypass processes. Yeah, of course they can if they have accesses to data or shortcuts. They just use because they have the opportunity or the possibility to do that. So having transparency, then you can fix this. You can reduce the access rates, for example.
I'd like to get a positive spin on that. Maybe that tells you that your process is broken because somebody else found a shortcut. And those psychology things where I forgot which university was it. They had some path between the buildings, and then they didn't do anything, and they were just waiting where the students walked, and then paved over where the students walked. Because that was obviously the path that people were taking.
Yeah.
And then they had a better layout of their walkways between the university buildings. I think that's pretty smart,
That's
figuring that out.
positive,
So I think the other side is when we talk about processes or procedures in general, it's like, no. You have an idea how it should be done. Maybe somebody else has a better one.
Yes.
Right? And that could be an indicator for it.
Yes, of course. So, and this is also, so now we have only the second step of the maturity model. So we have now the ownership done. Okay. So we have the analysis. We know about the data. It's transparent. And now we have the ownership done. Yeah. So the third step is to have the, let's say, RASCI matrix. So it's responsibility, accountability, it, consultancy, informed, and supportive. So that was not the right order, but yeah. So I think everyone should know this RASCI model today. So and there it is really regarding the processes. So who has the responsibility about the process, and who can manipulate or change the data. So this RASCI is not about the ownership of the data, but it shows, okay, who is taking the information. This is also important to have the data product at the end to ask us, okay, who takes the information? Is this information useful for this person? I don't know. So for example, in SAP, you have this, or in also other ERP systems, you have like the short text, and it is limited, or many fields are limited to a certain amount of characters you can type in. So, and sometimes you have these abbreviations, but no one who needs the information knows them, for example. So someone types in data in and information in, but no one else can use it because they just don't know what it means. So this is about definition again. And this is quite interesting. So if you are talking about that, okay, who uses the data? Yes, everyone uses it. We need to do it like that, and this need to be pasted in. And then you ask the one who's supposed to use the data. I have no clue what's in there.
And maybe a tangent thought around that,
Mhm.
being a consultant for this time that I do, you see a lot of different organizations, and every organization has their own lingo, right? And it's like, oh yeah, it's this, and then they throw some abbreviations at you, right? So the first order is to learn the lingo of the customer, that you know what they're talking about, right? When I help them implementing systems, BPM systems, EA systems, and whatnot, there's the magic field called full name, right? So that if somebody uses the term PO, right, it takes like 3 seconds for someone only once to type in the 2 words purchase order, right? And then you're done. And then you're done. And this object carries that long full name, that long form name, with it for the rest of its life, because people are using their lingo, and it's obviously clear, what is AI2? I've no clue.
Yeah. So the next one is the processes, of course, because also Rusky is often the basis for a process. Of course, you know it better than me. So if you know who is working in the process, then you can assign the task, of course. So and now we are at the point where you see, so we have this huge field of process management within the maturity model, and this is their own field. So I think, yeah, but it is one step of data governance to get data governed. So I hope now people get a clue or an idea how much effort it really takes to govern data. But you have to do it, and you have to go through the pain if you want to have a result at the end. So, and which is also important is to make data visible within the processes. So, for example, so you have the process steps, and it makes totally sense to write in this modeling tools which data is created or used at which task. And it's often not happening because they are so process focused, and now it turns into data focused. So like from process driven and to data driven, or more to data driven. It's not that from one day to the other we say, okay, we don't need processes. No, it's not at all this. It is in addition show data.
But they don't,
Roland, are you
yeah, but they
disappointed?
don't know. That no, quite the opposite. I applaud you for this, What I've seen as a challenge is the average person who's tasked to create a process model knows, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But when it comes to data, it becomes super abstract. And for them, it's like, oh yeah, I pull out this form, right? And I fill out this form, and then it goes away. And when you say, yeah, but what's on it?
Exactly.
What is the thing that you
Exactly.
fill out?
Exactly.
And one of my favorite stories, and I forgot who told me that, was in the UK. Someone improving processes, and a manufacturing company, and they had a field there where every day they put in the number 0, right? And he was asking, why do you do this? And I don't know. Uh, it's part of this thing. Okay, so then the curiosity was triggered, right? And he researched that and came back, and it was the number of German air raids on the factory in World War II, right? So over decades, every day somebody put a 0 in a form, because it had some relevance at some point in time, but it's a little bit outdated.
There is one point I would like to add. You have also to make the tools visible in the process. So it's the process, so the steps, the data, and the tools. So in which tools do you process the data? So all the three need to be connected. This is very important. Yeah. So I would like to just finish the maturity model. So the next step is data quality. So this is very important. So to really define what range of data is right in this field. And in terms of quality, what I put it in is the quality of the business data stewards. This is also a term or a type of quality within the data governance and then within the maturity model. So are these people well trained? Are the people well trained? Can they identify data issues within their department? And can they derive the root causes and distinguish, is it because of data? Is it because of processes? Because of people? So, and then bring this to the data steward council. Yeah, this is the body of the data stewardship, and also come up with a potential solution. So there you see the business data steward has a very critical and important task or role to fulfill. And I think to most of the companies, it's not clear what the data steward has to do. And it is part also to identify the causes of problems within data in their department. So this is what I mean when I say they have to look beyond the data. So a data analyst looks into the data, finds the issue, but the data steward needs to look beyond. So this is very important. Step 5. So now we have step 6, last step in the maturity model, because now, of course, you want to measure it. You want to see the change. You want to see how good is your data. Yeah. So this is, I think, the objective of any maturity model, to show something. So you can, for example, if you have identified your data element at the beginning, you can start to create, for example, a dashboard just to see, okay, how good I'm in terms of data. But of course, you only add value if you know what to measure. So if I say, okay, I have just a dashboard, it shows me, okay, I have the weight. Let's stay with weight. Okay, but is it right to have, is it logical? So is the data field filled in the right way? So can a physical thing weight 0? I don't know. I don't think so. So, but perhaps you have an exception. You say, okay, we have certain physical things where we do not need the weight. We just don't need it. So it's not a fault. If someone types 0 for a certain group of materials, for example, then it's not a fault because we don't need the information. This is also about data governance. Don't fill information you don't need. So no one needs to know the weight, I don't know, from a sheet of paper, for example.
Not for the transporting companies, a truck can just weigh that much. They can have an infinite number of data products. I think they have a weight of 0, but paper weighs something,
Yeah, you are right. But for example, if you don't transport the paper, so you don't need it in the chain, you have the data quality rules. And then you measure against these rules. So, and then you see, okay, I have like 100,000 of 0 values. I have to make a data cleansing, and then you can, of course, measure how it is, how it has improved. And now we come back to the point. What's often happens at a certain point of time, we make this measurement, or we check the data quality. Then we clean it. The data quality increases very, very high. And then after a certain time, it decreases again because you didn't stop the shit in. So the process is still a mess. And then you have, I don't know, some months later, you get back the people who clean the data, but you will never finish. And this is also a data product. If you reduce non-quality costs because you have set your rules and you have high quality data which can be processed. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The old habits kick in. You need to change the habits.
Yeah.
And then you stay on the desired performance level, I guess. And by the way, for everyone listening to this, I will put a wonderful graphic that Angelika provided about the 6 steps in the maturity cycle in the show notes, so that you can have this as your reference. Before we move on to the last topic, I still do have a question on the cycle. To me, and maybe you answered it and I didn't get it, so that's completely possible. To me, it's also a question: how do you manage your portfolio of data things? Right. So how do you identify what is the thing that's more important than any other data thing that we need to focus on? Because I could imagine if you have that maturity model, you have this portfolio process in also somehow in production, if you will. Somebody needs to go back and say, yeah, we're going to focus on this, but not on that. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? How do you do that?
Okay, it depends. So of course, as I've said at the beginning of the maturity model, there's always the prioritization of the data. So what data really causes the pain. But for example, now you have all your data stewards in place, you have the data stewardship, and now the data stewards come up with initiatives. So the data steward not only has one data field or that one data element, then you would have like 100 data stewards. It makes no sense at all. So you normally you cluster data into domains. Yeah. So for example, you have the domain like procurement, and perhaps within procurement, you have 2 data stewards. You split in 2, perhaps depending on the amount of data you want to govern. So, and now it is another task of the data steward. He or she brings up a data initiative into the business data steward or the data steward council and says, okay, here is a problem, and this is the root cause. This is the effect it has on our company, and here are some ideas how we can solve it. And then this data steward council is supposed to find a holistic solution. Also, what we are talking later about. So how to really train or implement the organization. Perhaps we have some time to talk about that. And then this initiative goes via the data governance manager who runs the data governance in an organization. Yeah, you have this data governance manager, and he or she decides, okay, this is an initiative we have to introduce to the manager, to the governor board, and there is made the final decision which initiative has to go first, also depending, of course, on the budget which needs to be allocated. But in general, this body, the data governor board or the governor board, needs to decide the prioritization of which initiative goes first and which has to wait. Companies do not have the perfect business data steward within the company. So as I've said, they take whoever is available, whoever has a clue of data, and often with a very low capacity. So this is a huge issue. In my point of view, in most of the domains, the critical domains, it needs at least one business data steward in, let's say between 50 and full time to really get data governed. You have to focus on it. And you have to think about it. You have to think about processes, about tools, about people. This is what I mean. This is really complex. And also about automation. So we did not talk about automation so far. So if you want to add in value, then you need also to automate processes, of course. So now we have an idea of the process, how it flows through the system. And we know who is allowed to manipulate data. We have a clue about the definitions. Why not to automate things? So like make a suggestion in the drop-down fields because of just logical combination of data you now probably have, or in a way which is that good that you can rely on it. And therefore you don't necessarily need like AI or whatever. It's simple automation, and it costs less, is faster, and it is also right because it's not probability. It is fixed. So why not solving problems with things where we know it works, and then creating new risks? So this is also one point. So So now, and then the effort decreases. So the idea of data governance is that the effort for data creating, changing, etc., decreases, and you have then more people who have things or more important things to deal with. And the data steward needs to, or is a crucial part of that, and he or she has to be like a like someone who drives the data topics, but also communicates about it and is a part of data culture and to shape data culture. So these people have to be trained well, so be very well trained, and they have to have a strong community around them so that they are able to talk about it. I don't know, it's like perhaps you are in a certain community, you have a certain passion, yeah, like a hobby or something like that, and then it feeds you with all the information, and then you can go out and can talk about it and be enthusiastic about that. So, and this is I think the most important, to really take the time with the business data stewards. If you don't have the perfect ones with the capacity, create the capacity and then create a strong community and enable the data stewards to spread it all over the company or organization. And that takes time. It takes time and effort.
Well, I think it's now a good point for us to turn this back to the audience, right? Just to see and take a little break before our last segment. But we spoke a lot about selling data stewardship, right? And let's talk about how you might sell data stewardship in your organization, right? You've seen what data governance might be able to do for your organization and the value, the structural support that you give, how it helps problem solving and all these things. Is that something that you want? Does it feel good for you? Do you see how you might be able to connect data governance with things like process management, enterprise architecture, IT security, and even strategy to make that a reality? We leave you for a moment and come back with our final thoughts and conclusions, and finally answer that AI topic that we haven't spoken about bigly before we leave you for this episode on data governance.
But it's just changing. It's just changing. The wind will blow. Oh, oh. But it's just changing. It's just changing. It's just changing. It's just changing.
And welcome back. Angelika, very, very, very interesting conversation. I'm still a little bit confused, to be quite honest, because there's that other topic that comes up in almost every conversation, and I don't know how I relate to this, but obviously people say that data is needed for this thing called AI. What is your opinion on that? How does data governance, how does data play into this if, as you said before, it's a probability game? You know,
Exactly.
how do you see the relationship between true hard data, you know, how much does this thing that we produce weigh in the probability game?
Yeah. So today we ask frequently, what are the costs of data governance? What are the costs if we do data governance?
Mhm.
And I think we need to change the question. What are the costs if we do not do data governance? If we do not keep our data clean and reliable? What will it take us in the future when we have like AI implemented over the whole company and we rely on wrong data? Or we have scenarios where our decisions are based on, we rely on something which has not a good database. And I think a long time we talked about this, data is like oil or something like that. So I would say data is more like, is it uranium in English? Uran? Yeah, uranium. So if it can be used like in medicine, but if it's not used in the right way, or if we have not the right conclusion, it's like a bomb. So it can destroy a lot. And I'm sure that we will have companies in the future which fail due to bad decisions based on AI, and the root cause will be very, very bad data. I think it's a big risk. So we talked about risks. So what would it cost to do not data governance? This used to be the question for companies. And then we are not at a point where we say, okay, we have now a nice organization. Congrats. We have a business data steward with 10% capacity, no training at all. And then, we haven't any governance. So we need to answer the question, okay, how we get our data governed, how we get AI ready. And data governance is a crucial point about getting AI ready for every company.
Yeah, there's still another question that I have. Angelika, where can people reach you? If they want to continue the conversation because they liked so much what they heard in this episode.
Yeah, so of course they can reach me on LinkedIn.
And we're gonna put a link in there, of course.
They can contact you, as you know me. Yeah. And I would be happy for any exchange. So if you want to know how to get the data really governed, and have a bit more like a deep dive into this model, let me know. And if you want to know how to connect business, IT topics, and so on, and really break the silos and come to like a team, being a team, a data team, data-driven team, then I would be happy to have an exchange, of course.
Well, I guess that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you, Angelika, for this very fascinating conversation. Really great conversation, good topics. I hope we brought the audience at some points to thinking about data governance and data stewardship and what the benefits are for their organization. But before we go, I do have a last favor to ask. We all know the drill, liking, subscribing on the socials and all those things. But maybe more importantly, I would appreciate if you could go and tell your 5 best friends about our little show that could, so that they might listen and watch our little shenanigans over here. And with that, I've been Roland Wold.
I am Angelika Rinck.
And we will see you in the next one.